Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us on day whatever of quarantine. And we hope that you are all safe and doing well, and your families as well. Today, we once again changed our topic that we had scheduled in order to really touch on the most relevant things. And the most relevant thing continues to be adapting to this work from home scenario and what we've all been thrust into. And today we're specifically digging deeper into how to approach it with information security in mind. And so we've covered some of this last month. This is in some ways part two on the same topic. There are some ideas that we're going to repeat here today, but if you missed last month, be sure to check it out. And you can see all of our webinars by going to our YouTube channel, the Top Dog PC YouTube channel, and you can watch them on demand at your leisure. As always today, I'll do my best to sort through your questions and get them answered as best I can, so don't hold back. Submit them into the questions, and I'll try to squeeze them in throughout the presentation or at the end if we have some time. So, all right. Let's get started. Real quick, for those of you who are new to us, my name is Jordan Darling, your color commentator and facilitator. This afternoon, I am a certified information system security professional, vice president of Top Dog PC, and CEO of High Tech Secure. I'm here with Joe Malmberg, your main presenter. Joe is the owner and president of Top Dog PC, the CTO of High Tech Secure, and holder of SANS GIAC Security Essentials certification. And so much more. And Joe and I were just actually talking about this with someone else that we're both coming up on 16 years that we've been doing this, or at least since we started our own business in this industry. So I hope our experience can provide you with some gold nuggets to take away with you today. So Joe, start dishing out those nuggets.
Sure. Well, and Jordan, one thing I feel I should also mention. You mentioned 16 years. Something I didn't mention to you today. Today is your 2-year anniversary at Top Dog PC Services. So, kind of cool.
Thank you. Yeah.
It's been around for a while.
2 years.
Thank you, everyone, again for coming to attending the webinar. I hope that what we're putting together here, you find some useful nuggets of information in here. Like Jordan said, we made it a little bit of a change to our topic, partially because mainly because this is so front and center right now. Last month we talked about just working from home, but and we touched on the security implications of that. But there's been a lot of news and a lot of development on that front over the course of the past 40 days. So wanted to bring some of that to your attention, and also just touch on some other things that just some general work from home trends that we've noticed over the past 40 days. So we'll get into it. So like I said, I also want to just give you a quick update about Top Dog PC, what we're doing, those trends that I was talking about, and then also want to just maybe cover some tools and tips that are available. Jordan's going to cover some of the tools, and you'll find a number of other tips in here as well. For us, what we're doing, I think I mentioned it last month, we're identified as an essential infrastructure worker industry in IT. So pretty much anybody that's helping other offices, people work from home, they're in it. Last month we had basically put a hold on all on-site visits minus emergencies. Right now we are slowly resuming on-sites. We're probably going to be asking people for their safe working policy instructions or manual or policy, so that we can see what you're doing, and so that we can kind of fold ourselves into that to make sure that we're doing all the things that we need to keep you and your staff safe. So just without further ado, we'll jump into some of the things that you can do. We're going to start with things that you can do at home. And just, looking at this, one of the first things is, it's depending on what your living situation is, whether you're at home with, your family, with your roommates, You know, some of these things you may not have already had a decision or an option to choose because you were just kind of, it was so thrust upon you. But you know, picking a space, you know, at home that has minimal distractions, you might not have that option, but you know, you've been there probably long enough if you're already doing this that you have selected a place that is working for you. One, if you haven't already, if you've done it already and you're working from home and you're not enjoying where you're working, you know, think about other spots in the house that might work for you. From a networking perspective, you know, we highly recommend that people put their desks somewhere that they can hook up a network cable to their computer. It's just going to give you a better experience. But you know, on top of that, then just kind of adopting this clean desk policy. So locking up your documents when they're not in use. You know, part of this is from an information security perspective. Part of it is, you know, what if a child, I have 3 kids at home. It's very possible one of them will snap a document off my desk if I leave it there. And then, you know, thinking about if, all right, you're printing stuff at home, maybe you're printing things that are potentially sensitive. In the office, maybe you had a shredder. At home, do you have a shredder? If you don't have a shredder, maybe you need to look at getting a shredder. You know, again, like I said, just securing those important work-related items, putting those in your drawer at night or when you're not at your desk. Next tip is to try to keep your work and personal computing life separate. We have, you know, a lot of people are using their own hardware to work remotely. One thing that we, you know, you need to pay attention to is how are you letting people use that hardware to work remotely? Are you letting them connect into your network using a VPN? If you're doing that, how are you confirming that the hardware that they're using and the software that's installed on there is, you know, they've got current antivirus? You know, you're allowing their hardware on your network, and you don't want them to have threats on their machine that could potentially compromise your network. So just a couple suggestions. You know, we could, you know, we can look at machines, we can harden them, make sure that antivirus, that type of thing is installed. You know, if they're not using their work computer right now, maybe it makes sense for us to move that agent over to their home computer right now. Also, just, you know, we've made some things difficult. If we are, if this is a work-owned computer, we make it difficult for people to install personal software on there, and that's on purpose, just because personal software, you have no idea where it comes from, right? You might think that you need this application to play this audio file that you just downloaded, but chances are you probably don't. You probably don't need to do it on a work laptop. And then the other part of this is don't let anyone use the computer who hasn't been trained on it. You know, there are a lot of different reasons for this, but you know, even in an environment, you know, where you're just working at your house, you know, if you're in a covered industry like healthcare or finance, and you have a policy that says that, you know, only I can use this computer, only trained individuals can use this computer, and something happens with a piece of hardware that, or you know, with a company laptop that potentially violates one of the policies that you're covered under, you know, under finance or HIPAA, something like that. You know, you could be on the hook. I'll give you a quick example. Laptop. I've told this story before, but laptop was stolen with healthcare information on it. It was an encrypted laptop. Typically, you wouldn't have to report that, but they did have to report it because the person who was using the computer at the time was the employee's teenage son. He was playing Fortnite on it, and he had it open. He was playing on it at the swimming pool. Someone ran up and grabbed it, took off running with it, and it was unlocked, so it was no longer decrypted. And the person that was using it wasn't supposed to be using it, so they had to report that, and they had to pay a big fine. So that's one of the reasons we bring that up. Make sure the device is secured. So obviously, you know, use a unique password. You know, this is your home computer. You might not have a password on your home computer. When possible, use a passphrase. We've talked about passphrases before. Passphrases are typically 25 characters or more and are made up of a phrase or a sentence rather than just a single word. and their complexity makes cracking them much more challenging. Again, if we're not managing the computer, make sure that things like that patches are occurring. I can show you that here on the next slide. Access protect your device if you can with multi-factor authentication. A lot of home laptops have fingerprint scanners on there and facial recognition. They'll use your webcam to let you in. Don't have that be the only thing that lets you into the machine. So if you are working from home, it's very simple to update your machine. If your Windows, this is going to be your Microsoft updates. You just go to your start menu, type in updates, and you'll see this little check for updates thing. You click on that and you can click go, and it's going to update all the Microsoft software on your computer. Now, that is going to just update the Microsoft software on your computer. It's not going to update all the third-party applications, which is something that we do with our management software for a select list of them. But yeah, if you've got other applications that you're using locally on your machine, make sure that those are also updated too. There are security patches being released for those all the time. Just something to consider with the end user machines, managing them. Who owns the computer, who's managing it, who's responsible for it. If you're using your home computer and it breaks, is my company going to replace it? Are they going to get me a new one? We highly recommend providing hardware for your staff. If not, like we said, potentially bring it under management. One thing that we can do, one of our vendors has created a kind of a run book for allowing us to run one of their tools on home PCs so that we can verify at the time that the scan was run that some just standard things have happened on the machine, like antivirus is up to date, that type of thing. And it's also going to check that their network is not allowing things in from the outside. So it might be a worthwhile thing for us to do for those computers that are not under management right now. And then something Jordan brought up to me the other day is for those who have said, hey, you know what, just grab the computer off your desk, take it home, you're going to be working off of that for right now. Make sure that you have some good asset management in place right now so that you're able to track all those things, because when things return to normal and people do need to bring those back to the office, you want to make sure that they're still there.
Yeah, and that in some ways applies beyond technology too, right? I mean, you got some people that bring their work chair home, like just everything from their desk home because they didn't have that stuff, or their chair at the office was much better. And so you got to kind of think about all this stuff that you're letting them bring home. How do you know where all the company stuff is?
Yeah. All right. So just next tip is just, again, we're already here. Many of us are, but we talk to a number of customers who are still, they have people in the office and they want to start working from home. Remote work readiness. Biggest thing for us, I think the most powerful thing for us has been having a good collaboration solution. That's things like Skype, Microsoft, not Skype. It's things like Slack, Microsoft Teams. We're using Teams. We used to use Slack. There are a handful of other ones out there. They are super helpful in maintaining a semblance of the communication that occurs in the office. When we're all here and we can overhear each other talking about the things that we're working on or the issues that we're experiencing. I highly recommend having something like that in place if you don't already. If you have Office 365, Teams is included right now, or most of the time it's included. I think that they have a short-term trial going on as well for anybody that might want to use it for the duration of for the next few months. I forget. I think they're offering it through June or July, so it's not forever, but it's not very expensive if you need to set up on it. And we have set a bunch of people up on it. Also lets you do things like remote meetings. Now we're using Zoom. Zoom is great. It works really well. It's really easy for people to connect. That's one of the reasons that we're doing our webinars with it. But you've probably seen some of the headlines. There have been some security issues with Zoom. A lot of owned accounts, a lot of them for sale out there, people jumping in on meetings. If you're going to use it, our recommendation with Zoom, we're using it today. We're comfortable using it for this type of thing. We're going to be publishing this thing on YouTube. So, there's really nothing confidential on here. But if you're going to use it selectively. Consider the topic that you're going to be discussing on Zoom. Business phone access for us has been huge. Having that available on the cloud is great. If you haven't moved your phone system to the cloud or to a voice over IP system, it's not incredibly difficult to do. It's a good time to do so, and it's not super expensive either. So something we're thinking about. VPN, of course, we've talked about before, having a good secure connection to your office over a virtualized private network. So you have a secure connection over the internet from your computer to your office's, usually to your office's firewall. And then,
Hey, Joe, real
yeah.
quick, if I could interrupt real quick.
Mm-hmm.
One of our attendees raised their hand,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not sure if they have a question or not, but if there's, feel free to type your question into the question box, and we'll get to it. I don't think that we are unmuting attendees at this point
Okay.
or
Okay.
anything, so I just wanted to let them know that if
Okay.
I don't know if it's an accident that they have their hand raised or if they have a
Okay.
question.
All right. I'll jump back into endpoint protection. So thinking about endpoint protection, there's more than one type here, right? So we're talking about antivirus, first of all, right? Making sure that, that's happening if it's a home computer. If it's a work computer, one of the things that we're doing in the office that we're potentially losing is, we're doing a lot of filtering at the firewall level from the office. That goes away when people are not connecting into the VPN or when they're just working from home. And there's still that concern that people might be accidentally, without meaning to, they could potentially be accessing sites that are harmful, that are contain malicious payloads. We have some tools that will extend the functionality of your firewall, all those that web filtering power to the endpoint directly, and still give you that insight into what's going on that machine. You can take it to the next level too. If we'll touch on this a little bit more later, but one of the legitimate concerns that we've heard from business owners who haven't embraced remote working from home in the past is, how do I know my employees work, and how do I know that they're actually doing the things that they're getting paid to do? And that there are tools like that. Specific endpoint protection tool will give you some insight into what they're doing during the day on that machine. It's also going to, there's some other solutions as well that will show you specifically what's going on their machines during the day and what they're accessing. So, it's a legitimate concern. So kind of jumping into some more topical things right now, I wanted to just talk a little bit about the types of threats that we're seeing that are directly related to the coronavirus pandemic. We are, again, like I said, we have these collaboration tools that allow us to try to mimic what we had at the office, but we don't have that, and we're isolated, and we're getting messages from people and we're trying to get our work done quickly and efficiently, and people are taking advantage of that. Bad guys are taking advantage of that. So just a handful of tips. If you get a message, if you or your staff, let them know. If you get a message you're not sure about, contact someone in your organization that you trust. Again, don't click on a link before you do your research. And one of the big ones that we see right now, especially, a lot of job offer ones are going around. With this unemployment. Beware of job offers that sound too good to be true. There's a lot of scams out there right now targeting people directly because of this. A little bit more just social media. I've been getting a lot more connection requests so far. Most of them all the ones I can tell are legitimate. Think about, before you share stuff on social media right now, think about what it is that you're sharing, especially because we had this segregation of work and personal life before, and a lot of that has really been merged right now. So when you're posting things on your personal social media site, make sure it's, consider, what is this? Is this what's in the background? What have I maybe taken a picture of? If I'm posting that, does it have work stuff in the background because I'm working on something that on the table, in the background? Pay a little bit more attention to that. Have your antenna up. Again, be aware of phishing attempts. There's a lot of them going on out there. Be skeptical of those unexpected messages. that you get those spear phishing ones that are specifically targeting you, are saying, hey, this is your boss, I need you to do X, Y, Z. Really just being diligent, paying attention. I know you get a lot of email in a day, but it's important to be skeptical of messages that we're getting.
Yeah, and Joel, a good
Mhm.
rule of thumb on that is if you're getting asked to provide sensitive information and you didn't actually solicit that request, you didn't call the bank, you didn't reach out to for this, then don't do it. Don't give out any kind of sensitive confidential information to an email that you didn't actually reach out to engage with.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And I mean, specifically too, I'll be talking about this in a moment here, but government agencies, they're not going to ask for that information. Your bank might, but your bank, you can always call them. One of the things we've repeated over and over, when you're skeptical of something, break the chain of technology. Pick up the phone. Make a phone call to them. Talk to somebody. Don't allow that conversation to continue over the mechanism that you were potentially receiving that you received that potentially unwanted message over. And then we've talked about it before. Consider we've got a great training solution. The content that they're putting out is fantastic. It's super relevant. They're putting together the phishing campaigns that we're sending, the simulations that we're sending out to customers that are signed up for this plan right now. They're COVID related. It's super relevant. They're constantly staying on top of it. It's a really powerful tool for your staff. This is some older news back in March. This is a map application that you could grab, and you were getting actually it was a website, and it was taking advantage of a potentially unpatched browser bug and vulnerability, and they were infecting visitors with malware. So that's great. Again, this is one of those things, patch your machines. This one is a little bit more recent. A lot of over 4,000 malicious web domains related to COVID-19 relief were registered in the last 30 days. There's a lot of money coming to people right now, and there are a lot of crooks out there who would love to get their hands on that money. So yeah, the top query on Google, as this says, is where's my stimulus check? So that's for the individual part, and obviously if we're business owners, there's the PPP part and the IDL loans as well. So there's a lot of new money flowing to businesses and individuals, and the bad guys are aware of that, and they're trying to get in the middle of it. So this is, again, it's all phishing. It's all the same stuff we're seeing before. It's just got a different label on it. Reuters is just this another headline. They're warning that they're seeing attacks against corporations surge right now, and it's because we're bringing our computers home and we're not connected, in the office like we were before. And a big part of it is, hey, we sent our staff home. They need access to this application that they didn't have before, and people are opening up that application to people to work from home, but they might not be thinking about security first. So when working with us, we've been trying to be very thoughtful about that, and following best practices. But if you have any thoughts or concerns about this, let us know. If there's an application that you do have access to, or that you want to have access to, and you're concerned about, what the potential your potential exposure is with it, let us know. We're happy to talk about it and discuss it with you. We know we know all your networks pretty well. So
Yeah, and Joe, I was reading an article the other day
mm-hmm.
about some of this surge in hacking against corporations, and just in general, because one of the things they uncovered is that some of these computers that were running at a corporate office were already compromised, but they were kind of dormant because they were behind a firewall. They couldn't do anything. And so now all of a sudden the workers are taking these computers outside of that protected network to their home, and suddenly now it can it can communicate and you know, attack and stuff. And I just thought that was interesting, and it kind of follows into what our topic was going to be, and you know, what we will cover in the future is, how do you know that you've been hacked, or how do you know that you're compromised? What are some things to understand how many computers in the corporation were already compromised
Hmm.
but couldn't do anything, and then you take them out of that security and
Yeah.
they're away.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. And that is, it's a really challenging problem too, because, you know, if it's been sitting on the network that long and you know, with ostensibly with somebody with IT background, you know, being able to see it on the network, and they haven't seen that 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 infection exist, and now they have it at home and it's actually doing stuff. Yeah, that's a challenging one to potentially catch, but there are some things you can do, right? You know, there's some of that additional protection you can add to the machine, like with that, very specifically with like the endpoint protection that you know, maybe they didn't, that they lost when they took it out of the office. Just some things that we got that been published by a couple different federal agencies. The Secret Service, they had they put out this memo about this. A lot of these, you know, you can see an example down here. This is a phishing attempt. They've actually, it's not a phishing attempt. It's well, it might be ultimately, but it had an attachment in there, and they're trying to exploit a now patched Microsoft Office exploit. But you know, if the machine's not patched, you're gonna get hit by this. So it's Word documents, Excel documents. Once it's opened, malware's basically, there's a payload attached to the document when you open it up. I've shown this before. You click the allow macros, and it's gonna run some. Actually, I think in this particular case, if you don't have the if you don't have the patch, you don't even have to click on that macro thing. I think they're looks for open shares on the network, steals login credentials, gets your IP address. If you are somebody who's into cryptocurrency, it's going to grab your wallet information. Another variation on this is a message that comes from the Department of Health and Human Services, and that's what that supplier one is here. That the one in the little box there at the bottom. Another alert from the FBI that they're anticipating a rise in email compromise schemes, and they were right. We're seeing that. There's quite a few out there. You know, it's the same old song. It's, let's try to get in the middle of legitimate funds transfers. If we're gonna sit there in the background, if we can get access to somebody's mailbox, we're gonna look for the time that they're gonna be doing a funds transfer. We're gonna try to get in the middle of it. So again, just to kind of lay down a little bit more information on this, Google is doing a ton of blocking of these messages every day. You can see they're blocking more than 100 phishing emails a day, 100 million phishing emails a day, but 18 million of those are coronavirus. So the bad guys are updating. They're constantly evolving. You know, when it wasn't before coronavirus, it was whatever else is going on. You know, we had it was in February. It's a Super Bowl. It just if depends on whatever's going on in the world, that's what they wrap their scam in. We'll give you a little example here. This is one we can just kind of go over. You know, they say experts have been telling us to wash our hands for 20 seconds. Let's give our emails, suspicious emails, at least 20 seconds, and look for these different attributes. So, you know, first of all, this message here, it's coming from Sarah Williams. It's going to all staff. So not a specific person in the business, it's going to all staff. They'll, you know, look for things like dear valued customer, that type of thing. You can look at the entire email address. All right. So this is from Sarah Williams, and this is Miller Supply. But if you look at that email address, it's using double N instead of an M, and that's a really common trick. In this font, you can see it pretty well, but in some fonts, that's a little bit harder to tell. Let's look for the the urgency, right? So immediately, must. You've won. Click here to redeem a prize, or we have your browser history. Pay now. that's a really common one, so that they can get you to click on it before you think. These attachments, don't click on attachments right away. You know, COVID staff survey. Here's the schedule I promised. Look for misspellings in here. Yeah, here we go. It's been spreading like wildfire instead of wildfire. Really common. But it's not in every single message. They're getting better. They're getting better. Some of them, we still see some awful ones out. We still see a lot of really bad ones out there, but we see some really good ones, especially when they start getting to be a little bit more targeted. Check for secure websites. So this link here, this is going to an IP address. It's really weird that that would be doing that instead of going to a, and you can tell that just when you hover over the link, you'll see that where it's going to. And again, this is not a secure site, it's HTTP. A lot of stuff on the internet is now secure. And what that means is that in order to have it on a secure site, somebody had to go in, they had to buy a certificate to make the site secure and not throw an error when you open it in your web browser, or a warning when you throw it up in your web browser. It does add some legitimacy. It adds a fair amount of legitimacy to a link, but you got to look at the whole thing, because what if, you know, topdogpc.com, somebody hacked our website and then they dropped their stuff at the end on there, and they're using our website to send to host bad stuff. It's happened to a bunch of people. It's happened to Microsoft. It's happened to people that know what they're doing. Pay attention though. It's up to you. Pay attention to the rest of the link.
Yeah, and sometimes those are they're definitely hard to judge sometimes if that is legit, because sometimes people still send links, you know, even the invitation to this webinar that we sent out, you know, if you hover over the registration button, you're going to see this big long thing, and sometimes it's hard to really, okay, is this legit? And sometimes it's just, if it seems odd, or if you don't know, then just verify it, follow up on it, call the person that sent it. What is this legit? You know, and that's that sort of thing.
All right, so our next slide here, I'm going to turn it over to Jordan. He's going to talk a little bit about some of the a couple tools that you can use in your internal network, or at your home network, to home network. And I'll really pass over, because some of it's your network, some of it's really just, let's look at how I'm set up here. So I'll pass it on to you, Jordan.
Yeah, really, what we'll touch on here is just your personal risk assessment. And, you know, one of the things that we always try to preach here is the importance of a risk assessment, you know, for your company, and your organization, and for you personally. But the idea of it is really knowing where you're at, knowing what your most significant risks are, and then building a roadmap to improve that. And like with, you know, attacking it in a more strategic way, and not just throwing things, buying more technology, which adds sometimes more risk when you do that. So one nice tool that's available is this S2Me assessment, and it's used to measure your own personal risk assessment. It's a tool that was created by our friends at Security Studio, and they've made this to assess personal risk. Why would you want to do this? Why, you know, if you never really considered, why would I want to take a personal risk assessment? One nice reason is because this particular tool is free, and it'll always be free. And that's kind of their goal with it, is they want to help. As we looked at some of these past slides, and there's some stats I'm going to share with you here. It's kind of important, you know, when the bad guys get through, when the bad guys succeed in what they're trying to do, real people get hurt. And, you know, I think it's like when me and Joel went into our businesses, it's because we're passionate about technology. We're passionate about business. You know, we have this passion to want small businesses to succeed and have the tools and support that they need, that is sometimes equal to what enterprises need, you know. But even though you're small, you still need these tools, and you need these things to work. And one of the reasons why information security is so important and near and dear to us is that that real people get affected by it and get impacted and taken advantage of. And we don't like to see that happen, and some of it can be prevented with some basic information, basic awareness, and basic steps. So it starts even with the individual with a personal risk assessment. Another reason why you'd want to do this is because you have to at some point recognize that nobody else is responsible for your safety and cybersecurity. You alone are ultimately responsible. It's not up to your internet service provider. It's not up to your government. It's not up to your company. It's up to you to make sure you are learning and practicing safety and cybersecurity especially for your own home network and the things that exist there that are important. And we'll touch on some of that here in a second.
Jordan,
Yeah.
if you're going to talk about this in a moment, just you can tell me you're going to talk about it in a moment.
Yeah.
But one thing I think is really interesting about this personal risk assessment you and I discussed it the other day is the fact that this isn't really just about cybersecurity. It's also about physical security as well. And talking about because they are interconnected, right? When you're information security professional, you're looking at all the different ways that data and information can be exfiltrated from your organization, in this case from your home. And you pointed out, I don't know if you want to talk about, what you pointed out, your gap that you had, with the home security system, right?
Yeah. And I'm gonna be completely transparent in this presentation. I'm gonna actually show you guys my S2Me
Oh, you are? Okay.
report. Yeah.
Okay,
And
I'll let you get into that too. I mean, but yeah, for me, well, I'll let you just continue with that. I'll have something else to add when you get to that point.
Right on. Yeah. So S2Me is nice and it's free, like I said, and it's less than 100 questions. You could take it. Some of the questions are challenging, especially if you haven't thought about it, or maybe you don't consider yourself to be super technical. But they have made it so that it's pretty easy to go through, and they've also in their latest version of it, there's a lot of good help. You can click on help on just about everything and it'll explain what it's talking about and what it's asking you and why it's important. But when you do the S2Me risk assessment, just understand that it's not about eliminating risk or being perfect. It's about being aware and making great informed decisions, building good habits. And so it's not a good idea to lie. You just be lying to yourself. Really, no, unless you share it with anyone, you're not. You're just lying to yourself. So if you want to have a good understanding of where you are and what your security habits are, you got to be honest with it. Also, another thing by doing this, it can be helpful if you have if you're applying for any kind of cyber liability insurance, whether personally or for your company, or you have some security demands that are flowing from other places. One example, I just helped my uncle, who's owned a home business for many, many years, and a very successful one at that. But now, with how technology has grown and information security being more and more of an issue, now he's having some of his clients require that he has this cyber liability insurance, and just these demands as things that he never really considered. It's just a him and his wife that run this business, and then when you start filling out the cyber liability insurance questionnaire, you almost feel like none of this applies to you. But the truth is that people want to hear that whether you're at home or wherever you're operating your business, they're going to want to understand what precautions you're taking to be secure, especially when it concerns them. And doing this S2Me assessment and kind of making it a practice, regularly going through it and updating it, and because you'll start addressing the little issues that you might find, and it'll improve. So as you do that, now you kind of have more awareness, and when people start asking, what are you doing, you have a better understanding. And also, if you choose to go through it, Security Studio, our friends there that put this out on their YouTube channel, they just released a 5-part series walking you through it. So if you want to kind of go through it step by step and have them kind of help you with each answer, you can just watch those YouTube videos while you're filling it out. Some of you might like that. Some might be able to fill it out very easily. So if you are curious about more reasons why you'd want to do this, I'd encourage you to at least watch part one of that webinar series. Evan shared quite a few interesting stats, some that are really disturbing, and some of them are here. I wanted to share some of them, and I'm just going to kind of speak them out, and you'll understand why they're concerning. But he goes into much more detail, so you can go watch that if you wish. Here's why it's important. Here's what you're protecting. It's not just about your business or your company's data that you might be accessing from home. This is about you and understanding what you need to secure at your home, your family and your loved ones that are on this network. 95.8% of 8 to 12-year-olds feel anxiety or depression if Wi-Fi is turned off, or if they lose access to their tablets or phone. And that's just an interesting stat. One of the things that Evan talks about with that is that, so the answer isn't necessarily just taking technology away. Technology is good, but you want to, teach people how to do it securely, how to use it properly. And so, controlling the things that you can control while still using the technology to benefit you. 51.8% of children say they have difficulty sleeping after being online. Yeah, that's a problem. Sleep is good. 84% of parents worldwide are worried about their children's online safety. 2 in 3 parents, 64%, agree their kids spend too much time online. But they're the parents. They can do stuff about that. They can implement things with that. 70% of kids encounter sexual or violent content online when doing homework research. Think about that when your kids are being homeschooled right now. But I mean, we all know that the internet is kind of a wildfire. 17% of tweens aged 8 to 12 received an online message with photos or words that made them feel uncomfortable. And what's more disturbing is that only 7% of parents were aware of this. So awareness, understanding, get involved in your network and what your kids are doing, how your network works and how you can secure it. 65% of 8 to 14-year-olds have been involved in cyberbullying incident. 36% of girls and 31% of boys have been bullied online. 16% of high school students, I don't know why I said it like that, but have considered suicide because of cyberbullying. So, I mean, this is a real thing. These are your loved ones that you want to protect, and there are things you can do to just be responsible. 75% of children would share personal information online in exchange for goods and services. That's a training opportunity. Teach your kids how to do this, and they're going to learn from you. So make sure you put the practices into place. 82% of sex crimes involving a minor are initiated from social sites. They're out there. 1 in 5 in U.S. teenagers who regularly log on to the internet says that they have received an unwanted sexual solicitation via the web. Only 1/3 of minors have ever reported sexual crimes. So these are some real world things that are not meant to scare you as much as inform you, and just understand that it's important to know your network. If you have a network and you're connected to the public internet, the least you can do is try to inform yourself, even if it's uncomfortable. Get someone to help you if you need to. So that being said, here's my S2Me score, and as you can see, I am fair, which is not good, but it's not bad either. But like I said earlier, I opted to be honest with myself. There are many areas that I am doing really good, and because I have set my home up with a lot of business class items and things like that, things that I practice in my business. But but some things I'm doing really bad on: backup and really securing my Internet of Things and physical security, and response. If I were to figure out that my home network was breached, what would I do? Um, and in the story that Joe mentioned was that as I was filling this out, I was on the physical security part, and we have a security system in place, um, and but the question was, do you arm it? Do you lock your doors and windows and arm your security system when you leave all the time? And I was about to say yes, but the truth is that we did that for the first month that we had it, and then after that we just kind of forgot about it, stopped arming it, and we don't do it on a regular basis. But so the importance of doing this report makes you realize kind of the things that you are missing. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to. It just means that you are aware and you can decide what to do with that risk.
I think that's great. I like the fact that this covers kind of everything from, it's looking at it holistically. We're not just looking at, all right, do we have a good firewall? It's are we locking our doors at night? And speaking to that too, there has been an increase in break-ins lately in our neighborhood. People are going around looking for doors that are unlocked. So lock your doors. It serves as a good reminder. Am I doing everything that I can? And are there some risks I'm willing to accept? Are there others that I'm not?
Yeah. Yep. And then once you complete it, you can have a it has recommendations for you, so you can know and you can approach them as fast or as slow as you want. I'd recommend just figuring out where you can improve the easiest and just start doing little things.
Thanks, Jordan. So I wanted to talk just a little bit more about, we were talking about working from home, but ultimately for a lot of us, we're still connecting into the office at the end of the day, right? So some of this I touched on last month, but it's still a concern. It still comes up. I wanted to touch on it. There have been many articles written about it as well. One of them was, your home Wi-Fi sucks, I think was the title. And it talked about how the fact that, home Wi-Fi, I didn't really touch on it too much here, but the home Wi-Fi that we have works great for things like Netflix, but it really can be challenging to use that with things like a VPN, things like remote desktop that are much more sensitive to packet loss. So this is why we always recommend connecting with a wire if you can. Bandwidth has been a concern. So like we said, from the home and the office. Now suddenly all this traffic that was occurring over the LAN, over the local area network when everyone was in the office, now all that's coming out over the internet instead. And that's a much smaller pipe than we have at the office. At the offices, most of us have at least a gigabit backbone. We're going down to, if many of us have a 10 megabit upload speed. So, that's 100 times slower than what we had before. And that's going up, going down, it's a little faster probably, but just something to consider. If you're having issues, we can look at doing things like rate limiting the VPN so that everybody has a consistent experience. We can put people into different priorities so that they have, based on what they do or the types of traffic that they're requesting, it can have different priorities. So just something worth considering. Also worth considering potentially bumping up your internet speed at your office if you haven't done it in a while. Comcast has been changing their plans like crazy, so has CenturyLink. The plan you signed up for last year probably doesn't exist anymore. You might be able to get an upgrade for not much money. Again, we've talked about the VPN. Try to avoid opening up access from the outside. If you're working with us, we're gonna advise you of that. Don't open up access from the outside without the use of a VPN. If you do have to do it, there are some situations where you do have to do it and where it's acceptable. When it's acceptable, at the bottom thing here, implement multi-factor authentication. Anytime you've got a service open to the outside world, and that includes a VPN, we highly recommend setting up multi-factor authentication. The Fortinet devices that we recommend, they give you 2 multi-factor authentication tokens. We can buy more if it's something that you're going to be doing short term, or if you want something that offers a little bit more flexibility, we can get you signed up for Duo, which is a multi-factor solution that works across a number of different applications, everything from Office 365 to your desktop on your computer to your firewall. Again, last one thing, Jordan and I, we do this at every single quarterly business review. We look at the user list. All right, everyone's using that VPN. Let's check that VPN access list. Let's make sure that that list of people that we're authorizing to use the VPN are the ones that we actually still want to be able to use that VPN. Maybe you opened it up for a vendor 5 years ago and you forgot about it. So important to look at those. We are not doing as much of right now, but I thought it was important to bring up the secure when you're in a public place. People have asked us about connecting to free Wi-Fi. Is that safe? If you're doing it, I think the last point down here is if you can connect to a VPN. For a number of our clients, we've set up the FortiClient VPN on their handsets. You can have all your traffic go out through your corporate VPN. Again, keeping confidential information private. That's like whether it's on your computer or you're talking to somebody so that it can't be overheard. I've got a privacy screen on my laptop, so unless I'm looking directly at it, I can't see it. People sitting next to me or row behind can't see what's on my screen. If you're out and about, again, like I said, we're not doing as much of that. You don't necessarily need to be online to be doing your work, so only go online when you need to do it. Other thing is to make sure if you are going to join a Wi-Fi network, make sure you're joining the right one. It's really easy for me to create a network that says Comcast free internet public Wi-Fi, and then I can watch every single website that you're going to. And if I'm really malicious, I can make it so that I can collect every single click that every single letter that you're typing. I can get all that information. So be careful with the public Wi-Fi. I recommend using your hotspot on your phone if you really got to do it. Talking about Zoom. So this is something that, of course, has happened recently. Tons of hacked Zoom accounts being sold. Not much money. They're not being sold for very little money. Let's talk about video conferencing security. A lot of this comes from our friends at Security Studio. This is a policy thing. Talking to your staff, don't post screenshots of your video meetings on social media. Right? You don't know what's in the background. It's not fair to your coworkers to be posting pictures of them. They don't know that that's happening. Be aware when you're on your meeting, if you're talking with people inside or outside your office, what's in the background? Is there something that someone shouldn't see in the background? All these tools have ways to hide what's behind you. You guys can look at the windows and the chair behind me right now in File Cabinet, but Zoom lets you put whatever picture or video you want in the background. Teams lets you blur your background, or they have a select group of photos you can post in the background as well. If you're sharing your desktop, close anything up that you don't want to be sharing with the world. Don't make your meetings publicly accessible unless you're doing like a webinar like we're doing. Don't post links to those on a public website. People are doing that whole Zoom bombing thing where they jump into meetings. It's things that a lot of high school kids are doing right now because they're not in school, which is why you want to set screen sharing to host only. There's the join before host. You don't want people jumping into the meeting before you start. I'll just zip through these pretty quickly here. You don't want people to be chatting privately with each other. That's a tip for schools, but maybe you don't want them to be able to do it internally. The file transfer, obviously, yes, you do not want to have a file transfer enabled. And if you boot somebody out of a meeting, you don't want them to come back in, so have that allow remove participants to rejoin. Don't have that enabled. You want to have muting people on entry so that if somebody joins the meeting and they're yelling at their kid or their dog, that they aren't blasting their voice over the presenter. Only authenticated users, if you can do that, have people authenticate, especially if it's a private meeting. And then that waiting room feature basically puts people in a little virtual waiting room before they are allowed to enter into the conference.
And Joey, I lead a small group at church on Wednesday nights, right? And so last night even, we do a Zoom meeting with the boys, and and you quickly realize some of those security vulnerabilities when when you're on a Zoom call with a bunch of middle schoolers, because they figure it out, man. They start presenting, they start doing all these things.
Mhm.
And one kind of tip is, if you do it, especially if you're doing it with kids, that waiting room feature is nice, because when they start getting out of hand, I just send them to the waiting room, and it's kind of like a little timeout, and
Virtual
then
timeout.
I let them back when they calm down.
Just a couple more things here before we wrap up. Just we talked about this a little bit before, the work from home policy. Do you have one? We have a template that's a little bit, it's kind of geared for education, but it can definitely be modified for work, for any kind of business. We also have, if anyone wants it, there's a bring your own device policy that we got from one of our partners that we can provide as well. Jordan, I didn't mention that too, but that's in the notes under the webinar folder. So when you're doing a policy, it needs to be customized to protect you as an employer and employee rights. It needs to also talk about what tech you've got and how it's supposed to be used. It needs to be easy to understand. It needs to be signed by the staff. Other questions, like I mentioned before, are people staying productive? It is a legitimate concern. I mentioned that there's the endpoint security tool that's going to give you some insight into that. If you really need to have more insight than that, there are additional tools available. If you're one of our customers that's using a remote desktop for a single remote desktop server for people to connect into, or for multiple people to connect into, there's a tool for that will show, their session was active during these times. So you can see, all right, they were actually working and doing stuff when they said that they were doing stuff. If you want to go a little bit deeper, there's another tool that we have that it was initially created as a tool for just monitoring computer use, and it can get rather in depth, grabbing screenshots from the machine and what the person's doing. But the other thing that they've added into it is a little bit of artificial intelligence. So if you have the software running for a little while, it'll show you. It's looking for trends. So it's a staff member that typically, if they start work at this time, they end work at this time, and they're in these applications. If suddenly, they've been working in Word and Excel all day long, and suddenly they start using Outlook every single day and they're sending out files and attachments, it's going to flag that and say, hey, this is suspicious. What kinds of data are they sending out? This is something maybe we should look at. Are they sending stuff because they're leaving and they're going to start a new job and they wanted to pull all the data that they've created or you've created? So something worth considering. I think right now we're all giving everybody a little bit of leeway, just because some of us may have kids at home, or at home environment is not as potentially built for being productive as our office is, and but as this extends out, that may be something worth looking at. So that's the last slide. I want to thank everybody for attending, and I guess I'll offer up if anybody has any questions. Jordan, I think we have a chat up on there.
Yeah, we don't have any questions.
Okay.
Right now, so we're good.
Okay, so next month we're going to be doing I believe if we can have our partner join us, we have a cyber liability, cyber insurance provider who's something of an expert on the subject matter that is going to be joining us. This is something that we've been talking about. We've been talking about doing for a few months now. It's something that, it's not as top of mind right now, but it's relatively inexpensive insurance that can protect you and your business from some pretty major financial issues later on. If you get hit with ransomware, that type of thing.
We do have a question just popped in. Just
Okay.
Someone just asking if these are recorded for viewing later with staff and things, and the answer is yes. We publish them to our YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube and you look for Top Dog PC, you'll see our channel, and you'll have access to all of our webinars, including this one, once it's available, which it should be by the end of today.
Jordan, now, if it's easy to, if you could toss that on the, I don't know, there's a chat here. We could throw it in the chat, link to the YouTube channel. Did people get a link to this recording when they're done too, if they've registered through Zoom? I can't remember if it does that.
Not automatically. I have that turned off.
Okay. All right. Well, if it's on YouTube, that's probably good enough. It's got all the other ones on there as well, so you can hear me drone on for about 6-7 hours. I think four hours. I think we got 4 of them so far. So
I'll send a link to all the people that registered.
Okay.
When it's online, I'll just send a note saying with a link to the YouTube.
Okay. All right. Well, we're at the top of the hour now, so we've used the time that you guys gave us. I really want to thank everyone for attending. If we do decide to change the topic again, potentially like Jordan was saying, we were going to do the "How do I know I've been hacked?" If that's more relevant next month, it's possible that we'll change that as well. But this is kind of what we got going for right now. And thanks for attending, and look for our next announcement in about a month. Be safe.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.
Yeah, bye.